It's Patrick Hutzel from intensivecare.com, where we instantly improve the lives for families of critically ill patients in intensive care so that you can make informed decisions, have peace of mind, real power, real control, and so that you can influence decision making fast, even if you're not a doctor or a nurse in intensive care. In last week's podcast interview, I featured Penny from the UK with part 2 of My Husband Died on a Hospital Ward After a Stay in Intensive Care. He should have been readmitted back to ICU and the hospital let him die without trying to save his life. And that was part 2 of an interview. You can check out this last week's interview by clicking on the link below this video. In this week's blog, I want to ask you, are you itching to make informed decisions, get peace of mind, control, power and influence when your loved one is critically ill in intensive care? One of the biggest frustrations you are dealing with, if your mum, your dad, your husband, your wife, your sister, your brother, your grandmother, your grandfather, your niece, your nephew, or your uncle and your aunt is critically ill in intensive care, is simply the lack of information you are getting. You are probably scratching your head and you are wondering, what does it all mean? The number of people who come to us here at intensivecare.com when one of their family members is critically ill in intensive care and they tell us things like, I don't know what it all means, or they say, I have no information or lack of information. Or they say things like it all doesn't make sense. Or they ask things like, what does it mean if my loved one is on a ventilator? Or they ask, is it best for my loved one to have a tracheostomy or not? Or they ask, my loved one isn't waking up after an induced coma. How long does it take? And we're only scratching the surface of questions we're getting here all the time. Therefore, I know how much you are itching to piece together a puzzle that seems to be so difficult to solve. Moreover, intensive care teams are busy people. They generally are poor communicators. They use the medical language that's so difficult to understand if you haven't worked in intensive care or in the medical industry. They also don't take the time to tell you and explain to you in layman's terms what you need to understand and look out for and what it all means. And besides, intensive care teams have interests that go way beyond telling you about your critically ill loved one's diagnosis, prognosis, or the care and the treatment that's being offered or not offered because the way it's being positioned. And it almost always depends on what's happening behind the scenes in intensive care. You simply don't know what you don't know. And as a matter of fact, if you don't know and if you don't understand what's happening behind the scenes in intensive care, you don't understand how an intensive care unit operates on a deep, intimate, and also on a deep psychological level. And if you don't know and don't understand that the goals of an intensive care unit are often contrary to your goals, you will literally stand no chance to make informed decisions, get peace of mind, control, power, and influence when your loved one is critically ill in intensive care. No matter how much you are itching to make informed decisions, get peace of mind, control, power and influence, if you are doing what 99% of the families of critically ill patients in intensive care are doing, you are literally doomed. This is extremely important and particularly true, and if your critically ill loved one is either very unstable and in a very critical condition, or your loved one is in a life-threatening situation, or your loved one is not waking up after an induced coma, or your loved one is in intensive care for long-term treatments and long-term stays, including long-term ventilation, or if your loved one is having a severe or traumatic head or brain injury, Or your loved one may be threatened with an NFR, not for resuscitation, or DNR, do not resuscitate order. Or your loved one may be in a situation where the intensive care team suggests that a withdrawal of treatment or a limitation of treatment might be, quote unquote, in the best interest for your critically ill loved one. Or your loved one may be, in fact, approaching the end of life in intensive care. But the bottom line is that you'll never be able to make informed decisions, get peace of mind, control, power, and influence in the situations that I just mentioned if you do what 99% of the families of critically ill patients in intensive care are doing. The good news is that given that you are here and given that you are watching or listening to this, there's a very good chance that you have realized that what 99% of the families of critically ill patients in intensive care are doing is not working. The good news is that given that you are here and given that you are watching or listening to this, you have probably realized that you need to do something very different compared to the 99% of the families of critically ill patients in intensive care who make no informed decisions, get no peace of mind, and no influence. By now, you are probably again itching to stand out from the crowd, and I know you are determined to make informed decisions, get peace of mind, control, power, and influence, no matter what. By now, you have probably realized the only way to scratch that itch is by taking control, by getting power, getting influence, and by getting peace of mind, by doing your own research, by getting informed, by starting to learn to ask the right questions, and by not being intimidated by the intensive care team. Once you have realized that you are the one holding the key in your hands to get the outcomes that you want, need, and deserve for your mum, for your dad, for your husband, for your wife, for your sister, for your brother, for your grandma or your grandpa, or for your niece, your nephew, or your uncle and your aunt, once you realize that, everything will change. Because all of a sudden you realize that the intensive care team is most likely not being open and transparent with you. Most likely you would have realized by now that what you see is not always what you get in intensive care. And therefore you know that it's time to act and take matters in your own hands. And most of all, don't let the intensive care team define what fate and destiny your critically ill loved one should have. The good news is that you have come to the right place, and I can give you all the tools, the information, the strategies, the tips, the insider tricks, the questions you need to ask, and the mindset that it takes to scratch your itch to make informed decisions, get peace of mind, control, power, and influence quickly. You certainly don't want to leave the interpretation and positioning of your critically ill loved one's diagnosis, their prognosis, as well as the care and the treatment your loved one is receiving or not receiving up to the intensive care team, because you simply don't know their hidden agenda. You and your family know by now that your critically ill loved one deserve better than the treatment you and your loved one are currently experiencing. You and your family know by now that everything in life is negotiable. You just don't know how to negotiate with the quote-unquote all-powerful intensive care team yet, because you are still intimidated. And you need to stop that. You need to stop being intimidated, and you need to step into your own power instead. You are literally in a once-in-a-lifetime situation that you know you can't afford to be getting wrong. And thankfully, you have all the tools at your disposals here at intensivecarehotline.com. Whether you browse our website or read our free newsletter with hundreds of articles, videos, and podcasts, where I answer real questions from real readers and real clients. Or if you purchase one of our ebooks that comes with videos and audio recordings as well. Or if you engage me in one-on-one phone, Skype and email counseling and consulting, and as a professional advocate, I know that I can deliver results and help you and your family to get the outcomes that you want, need, and deserve. And here's a warning. Unfortunately, I have many families in intensive care coming to me wanting to debrief the loss of their loved one after critical illness in intensive care. Or they want us to review the medical records from the ICU stay to find out what exactly happened, to get closure. And that's fine. We can do all of that, and I'm no stranger to bereavement counseling. And we can also review medical records and find out what's happened to ensure there was no negligence going on. But when I hear people's stories, or when we review medical records, I know that I could have helped them had they come to me much earlier. And I know that I could have improved the chances for their loved one's survival if they had only come while their loved one was still alive in intensive care. Can you now see where this is going? People need to scratch an itch one way or another. I know which one I wanted to scratch. I'd rather scratch the itch that makes it more likely to save my critically ill loved one's life rather than scratching the itch of trying to find out what's happened after it's been too late. Don't leave it too late and scratch that itch now, because you want, need, and deserve a better outcome than the one the intensive care team is offering you and your family. Don't be sucked down by their negativity and take action now. So, how can you become the best advocate for your critically ill loved one, make informed decisions, get peace of mind, control, power, and influence quickly whilst your loved one is critically ill in intensive care? You get to that all-important feeling of making informed decisions, get peace of mind, control, power, and influence when you download your free instant impact report now by entering your email below. In your free instant impact report, you learn quickly how to make informed decisions, get peace of mind, real power, and real control, and how you can influence decision making fast whilst your loved one is critically ill in intensive care. Your free instant impact report gives you in-depth insight that you must know whilst your loved one is critically ill or is even dying in intensive care. Sign up and download your free instant impact report now by entering your email below. In your free instant impact report, you learn how to speak the secret intensive care language so that the doctors and the nurses know straight away that you are an insider and that you know and understand what's really happening in intensive care. In your free report, you will also discover how to ask the doctors and the nurses the right questions, discover the many competing interests in intensive care, and how your critically ill loved one's treatment may depend on those competing interests. How to eliminate fear, frustration, stress, struggle, and vulnerability, even if your loved one is dying. You get 5 mind-blowing tips and strategies helping you to get on the right path to making informed decisions, get peace of mind, control, power, and influence in your situation. You'll get real-world examples that you can easily adapt to your and your critically ill loved one's situation. How to stop being intimidated by the intensive care team so that you will be seen as equals. You'll get crucial behind-the-scenes insight so that you know and understand what's really happening in intensive care and how you need to manage doctors and nurses in intensive care. And it's not what you think. Thank you for tuning into this week's blog, and I'll see you again next week in another update. Make sure you also check out our Your Questions Answered section, where I answer your questions, or simply send me an email to support@intensivecarehotline.com with your questions. Or you can call me, find international phone numbers on the Contacts tab. Also, check out our ebook section, where you get more ebooks, videos, and audio recordings, and where you can also get one-on-one counseling and consulting with me via Skype over the phone and via email by clicking on the email and phone counseling tabs on the top of the website. This is Patrick Hutzel from intensivecarehotline.com, and I'll see you again next week in another update.